911 your emergency?
The little boy just ran in the front door of the church.
How'd he get to the daycare?
Walked here.
How old is he?
He's 4.
He's 4 years old and he walked there?
Yes, he did. And he said his grandparents are military.
Okay.
And they have
That
blood all over
morning
them.
was the most terrifying day a 4-year-old child could ever experience. On the morning of March 27, 2003, a child rushed in panic into the kindergarten in the village of Bradford, Ohio. This child was Damon Huffman, one of the students of that school. The teachers froze because Damon's clothes were soaked in blood from head to toe. They thought the child was injured and immediately tried to help him. However, Damon said nothing had happened to him. He said the ones who needed help were at home. His grandmother and grandfather were lying in blood. It later turned out that Damon had walked more than 1 kilometer from his home to the kindergarten by himself. That morning had turned into a terrible nightmare for him. He had not only witnessed the death of his loved ones, he had also seen the person who took his grandparents away from him.
What do you remember?
A door opened.
Your bedroom door?
Yeah.
And who did you see? Why don't you tell me what your name is?
Damon Huffman Myers.
How old are you, Damien?
I turned 4 because I had my birthday already.
Okay.
Hey, are you a sheriff?
Yeah.
Damon Huffman was only 4 years old, but even at that age, he saw how cruel life could be. He learned that one morning your loved ones could be taken away for no reason. After the 911 call, police teams first went to the kindergarten. At that moment, no one knew exactly what had happened. The fact that a small child covered in blood had walked all the way from his home to the kindergarten was shocking enough. The teachers told the police that they could not reach Damon's grandmother and grandfather, neither from the home phone nor their cell phones. Everything indicated that something was very wrong with the family. As difficult as it was for a young child, the police had to speak with him. He was the only one who could explain what had happened. Damon told the police that he woke up early in the morning and saw a large green figure near his room. According to the little boy's statement, this green creature, he had been terrified. At that moment, he thought that if he pretended to be asleep, the monster would go away. And it actually did, and he quickly fell asleep again. When he woke up a second time, he realized that his grandmother and grandfather still hadn't come to wake him up for kindergarten. Even for someone as young as Damon, this was worrying because they woke him up every morning. So he got out of bed by himself and walked toward their room. That was when he came across a sight he would never forget for the rest of his life. His grandmother Linda and his grandfather Jack were lying motionless in their bed, and there was blood everywhere. Because he was so young, Damon couldn't understand what had happened right away. He even tried to wake them up, but there was no response. Confused, he tried wiping the blood with a tissue, but there was too much of it. When he finally understood the situation, he remembered that in an emergency he needed to call 911. He tried calling from the home phone, but the line wasn't working. Not knowing what else to do, the child thought that the only place he could go was the kindergarten. This was the first time he had ever gone outside alone. Every morning, his grandfather Jack used to drive him to school. Miraculously, Damon remembered the way and managed to reach the kindergarten. The police understood that the green monster Damon described was actually a stranger wearing green clothing. After learning what happened, officers immediately headed to the Myers family home, and before the detectives even began the investigation, one thing was clear. Sometimes in life, even the darkest moments teach something. One can't help but wonder, if we had the right information earlier, could things have turned out differently? When the police team arrived at the Myers family farm, the first thing that caught their attention was that the front door of the house was wide open. Suspecting that a stranger might still be inside, the officers entered quietly with their weapons drawn. They checked every corner of the house, but no one was there. When they entered Jack and Linda's bedroom, the officers immediately checked for a pulse, but it was already too late. Jack had been shot in the back of the head. His body suggested he had been killed while he was asleep. Linda's position, however, showed that she had woken up at the sound of the first gunshot, but before she could react, she was shot in the head as well. They had lost so much blood that even if the police had come sooner, saving them would have been impossible. Little Damon would never forget the scene in that room for the rest of his life. The sheets soaked in red, the horrible, heavy stillness in the air. Who could be cruel enough to do something like this to an elderly couple, and why? The police's first assumption was that the case might be a robbery, but after a detailed inspection, it became clear that nothing valuable had been stolen. A robbery usually ends in murder only when the homeowners catch the intruder. However, the Myers couple had been killed intentionally, deliberately, while they slept. To the detectives, this looked like a murder committed for personal motives. The more they examined the house, the more they realized how deliberate and planned the intruder's actions had been. One of the clearest signs was the cut telephone line. That was why Damon had been unable to reach 911. But how could the killer have known that a small child would try to call the police? Detectives also noted that the house had a functioning security alarm system. However, the system had been disabled, as if it had been turned off from the inside. So how did the culprit manage that? The answer was found in the basement of the house. In the basement, there were clear signs that someone had forced their way in. This meant that the intruder knew the alarm wouldn't activate if they entered through the basement. After getting inside, the culprit shut the system down. Such knowledge is usually possessed only by someone close to the homeowners. The crime scene investigation team examined every doorknob and surface inside the house to find fingerprints. But after those belonging to the residents, there were no foreign prints at all. This suggested that the killer had used gloves. Another important finding were the set of footprints in the soil outside the basement window. The tracks were fresh, and they did not match the shoes of anyone living in the house, meaning they most likely belonged to the killer. But there was a striking detail. The size of the footprints was quite small. Based on this, detectives did not rule out the possibility that the culprit might be a woman or even a young person. But the most important point was this. The killer knew the victim's home extremely well and knew exactly how to enter it. Everything had been carefully planned. The intruder moved without leaving any trace, except for that one pair of footprints. However, in the early stages of the investigation, those prints did not lead to a concrete result. All the evidence suggested that the attacker was someone close to the family, or at least someone who knew them. But one detail stood out even more. Damon hadn't heard any gunshots. Even though the killer had spared him, that didn't mean he was safe. Damon had witnessed what happened, and with the killer still free, he could be in danger at any moment. Therefore, the child was taken into protective custody at the police station. Meanwhile, detectives began searching for possible suspects. What they knew so far was that the killer had a personal motive. The crime took place in Bradford, a small village in the state of Ohio. The population was very small, and crimes like this were almost unheard of. Moreover, Jack and Linda Myers were well known in the community. They owned the popular local pizza shop. People respected them and knew them as kind, warm-hearted couple. Jack and Linda had been married for only 7 years, but their bond was strong. They first met in 1993. Both of them had been divorced at the time. Jack had 2 sons from his previous marriage, Greg and Travis. Linda had a daughter, Amber. Their personalities fit so well that they quickly grew close. After blending their families and living together for a while, they married in 1996. Their work life was also going quite well. They opened a pizza shop, and they were also involved in car buying, selling, and repair. In addition to all that, Jack owned several rental properties. Since they were getting older, the couple did not have a child together, but fate had another surprise for them. Linda's daughter, Amber, became pregnant at the age of 16. Jack and Linda handled this situation with maturity. They decided to take care of their grandchild until Amber finished her education and was able to stand on her own feet. When Damon was born in 1998, they brought him into their home on the farm. During that period, Jack's sons were already adults and living with their own families. So the arrival of their grandson brought great joy to the couple. While Amber focused on her education, his grandparents gave Damon endless love and attention. They were wonderful role models. That's why Damon, despite his young age, grew up to be a very smart child. By 2003, when the tragedy occurred, Amber was already independent, earning money and even married. She planned to take Damon to live with her soon. But now, this wasn't just a plan. After the tragedy, it had become an obligation. Looking back at Jack and Linda's successful and happy lives, detectives believed that the only kind of person who could harm them so brutally must have been driven by jealousy. Could the motive have been their business success, or did Jack and Linda have a secret no one knew about? One of the detectives suggested that Jack might have had a conflict with someone related to his rental properties. Perhaps one of the tenants owed him money and decided to eliminate him because he couldn't repay his debt. However, the investigation showed